Welcome to the Outlander Unhinged podcast, where we talk deep dives, wild theories, and the heart of Outlander. I'm Doreen.
I'm Liz.
I'm Jenny.
And I'm Katie. Grab your snacks, Sassenachs. It's time to talk about Outlander.
Once again, we have greatly misjudged our ability to talk about characters ad nauseum. So, surprise, you are going to be getting 2 episodes this week. This episode, we are going to focus in on Liz's character choices, and it will be the mushrooms, onions, and hard nuts of Outlander, part 3. Okay, so Liz is 1 for 1. Jenny, you were 1 for 2. So let's go to our last character and see if Liz can go 2 for 2, or if
people.
we're all
You
gonna...
all know I held my
All
own.
right. Okay.
Jenny, you always hold
this
your own. You constantly impress me.
I think this next
All right, Liz,
character
let's hear
will
it.
probably be this next character will be the reason that we are no longer speaking at the end of today. So
The podcast has been canceled.
Okay, last, guys.
Oh, the last character for this round of the podcast is Frank the Tank. Frank the Tank. And I believe that Frank the Tank is an onion. I haven't even
Before you start, when you say Frank the Tank, all I think to myself is I want Frank to be ran over by a tank.
A tank?
I'm just saying. Let's just start there.
I already see where this is going, so good night and good luck, everyone. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. All right.
Don't make me do a spit take.
Just like there is controversy surrounding Roger, there is a lot of controversy around Frank as well, and I am fully aware of that. I think that Diana intentionally wrote Roger and Frank this way because she has bigger things planned for them that will lend themselves to expanding the storyline in an incredible way. I have always said that Frank is a layered man, and for that reason, I believe he is an onion. As the story grows, so does Frank, but not necessarily in a conventional way. And as the layers peel back within the story to bring new events and plot lines to the forefront, Frank's layers become more evident. Frank plays a huge role in the Outlander story, and it has taken time to explore the avenues of his layers. I very much think that Frank is part of what I call the triad. 3 points in a literary relationship where every character is connected by a common theme. And I'm looking forward to finding out the extent of Frank's involvement with Jamie and Claire. I really do believe that he will play a part similar to Roger in saving everyone at the end of Outlander. We are introduced to Frank as Claire's first husband. He seems to be a simple man and someone who loves her desperately. He's an academic, has an affinity for the Scottish Highlands, history, particularly folklore, and has completed his service in MI6 and World War II. That obviously plays a huge part in the creation of Frank's character because he has become his life experiences. Without Frank, we do not get Claire in Scotland on her second honeymoon. We do not get Claire visiting Craignadoon. We do not get Claire being pulled to the forget-me-nots, and we do not get Claire time traveling to the past to meet the king of all men, Jamie Fraser. The fact that Frank had such a pull to Scotland himself means that there is a layer of him that serves a greater purpose. But Frank also has a history separate from Claire, and some of that is noted in the novella, A Leaf on the Wind of All Hallows, which adds many more layers to Frank's character development. Anyone listening, if you have not read that novella, highly recommend. Frank's storyline in this novella came as pure shock to me and has really helped inspire my belief that he really is an onion. So, we know that Claire disappears when she time travels to the past. After Frank and Claire reunite, we get to see a different side of Frank. He is still equally in love with Claire, but he isn't the same. His wife was just missing for 3 years, and he's trying to rationalize everything that has happened to her. Frank, being the man that he is, cannot ignore or look past what Claire is sharing with him. And this is where Frank's character really starts to become controversial. Diana is absolutely brilliant for writing him this way. But lest we forget, There is a lot that we still do not know about Frank. There are gaps in his storylines, there are plot holes that need to be filled, there are questions that need to be answered. We don't know the extent of what Frank did during the years that Claire was gone when she first went through the stones, and we know that during the 20 years Frank and Claire spent together after her return, Frank suffered alongside Claire. All the while, he was researching, looking for answers, seeking out information, all for the sake of his family that he would never truly be able to let go of. Frank moved in silence, his love unspoken. Frank knew a lot about what was to come, but he also knew that he, as one man, could not stop fate and destiny. So, as a man who tried to do the best for his family, he did that through his research, preparing Brianna for what might come. If Frank had said something to Claire, would that really have stopped any future decision she would have made? And if Frank told Brianna everything he knew, how might that have changed his relationship with the only daughter he would ever have? Frank was not willing to give that up, and selfish as that might be, Doreen, he wanted to hold on to the family he had for as long as he could, and I do not think that makes him a bad man, a bad father, or a bad character. Throughout the books, even after Frank passes away, there are echoes of him, and his essence can be felt not just by Claire and Brianna, but by other characters as well. This has also been seen in the show. Based on the season 8 announcement for Outlander, we saw a glimpse of Jamie connecting with Frank in a very unconventional way, reading a book that Frank had written about a period of time that covers Jamie's life. I am so curious to see how Jamie reacts to seeing a picture of Frank, knowing that he looks exactly like Blackjack Randall. Even with Frank still being present in this way, his story is still developing, and the layers of what he has done and what he knows are still being peeled back. Frank knows a lot more than we think he does. I will also not sit here and pretend that Frank was a perfect man, because let's face it, he isn't. In the books, Frank says some really terrible things, and I am not approving that at all. I also don't think Show Frank cheated with Candy. Yes, I know her name is Sandy, but I call her Candy. There was an agreement between Frank and Claire. But I think it is important to note that we're reading about Frank and watching him in Outlander with 2025 eyes. The first book was published in 1991, and at that time, it wasn't taboo to write about men who behaved in particular ways. Frank is a controversy and a mystery, and he's also a character for conversation. I feel very strongly that the show took all of the best parts of Frank and used that to create this character. Book Frank was written with no censoring and no limitations, so of course he's going to be portrayed differently. That is something to keep in mind as you go through Outlander. And that is why I feel Frank is an onion. Okay.
All right, we letting just Doreen just like spill at this point.
Let's go. Here we go.
Okay. Am I going first?
However
Sure.
you want to do it.
First, I'm just going to
Well
say,
then.
Liz, I love you. And I'm going to do my best to respect you because you're a dear friend of mine. And I know you love
I'm fully
Frank,
scared.
though I have no freaking idea why. I'll never understand it. But before I read what I have written, I want to just say that every single point that you just made about Frank being relevant and that his purpose was to bring Claire to the stone so that she could be brought to Jamie supports 100% my case that he is a hard nut who just moves the plot forward. And he is there to only serve a purpose of getting Claire where she needs to be.
Okay.
Love you.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay, this is what I wrote, and I'm just going to read it because I don't even
Do
know.
it.
Okay, first I said, yes, I agree with you 100% that Book Frank and Show Frank are very different characters. I think if I was viewing this from the lens of only Frank's character, I would view him in a very different way. Because I think what you said is very brilliant, that they took the best parts of Frank and they created a character for the show. And I think it was necessary because we had to see that internal conflict of Claire. Am I going to go back? Am I not going to go back? Because honestly, Book Frank, your girl, leave him.
Yeah.
Right.
So This is the first point that I want to make, is that when we're analyzing Frank and his character, we have to separate his story and what he knew from him as an individual when we're categorizing him. For example, the progression of us as a reader or a watcher learning just how much Frank knew is reflective of an onion, but and don't get excited because I don't think he's an onion. I mean this in the sense that what Frank knew is revealed to us in layers because one, it is necessary to the plot and driving it forward, and two, because it is being shown by other characters and not by reveal of Frank himself. It's almost being told as a part of history. If you look at the entire series, at no point is anything ever being revealed to us or shown through growth or shedding of a layer by Frank. This is going to piss you off so bad, but I would go so far to say that as a person, Frank is not layered at all.
Wow.
His motivations never change. His academic mindset stays put, and his decision-making never falters. He's about as predictable as a Hallmark Christmas movie plot. And the most significant trait about him, I'm sorry, the most significant trait about him is his jealousy. It never leaves him, and it drives him in everything that he does. The first thing that comes to my mind when I think about Frank is selfish and then historian. And by definition, that's exactly the type of character a hard nut would be in my mind. At his core, he's a historian, and he shows us time and time again, academics, history, and his reputation were always his priority and motivation, and he never evolves past that. In Go Tell the Bees That I Am Gone, which is book 9 in the series, Claire herself admits this. Now, you guys have seen this in the season 8 trailer, so it's not a book spoiler. But Jamie is reading a book that Frank wrote. And in this book, Claire and Jamie, meeting bees, Claire and Jamie are talking about Frank's book and the information that is in the book. And Jamie stops and asks Claire, can you trust him? Can we trust his word to be true? Without even faltering, Claire says, and this is a quote, he was a historian. He wouldn't and couldn't falsify anything because that is just who he is, a historian. Now, I don't know about you, but to me, that screams hard nut because what could be more hard nut than a historian who is bound to the truth of history? If you look at Frank's story start to finish, he does not and ever can change his motivation. He's consistent that showing everything he does is centered around his career, his reputation, his pride, jealousy, and most notably, his need for control. Every single decision that he makes, even his most defining ones, and you are not going to like this, the ones that should make him somewhat digestible and even lovable, well, he's not lovable ever, but they do the opposite. Can I give you the examples? Can I? Because they're kind of counteracting what you said. The first example of this is him taking Claire back when she came through the stones. And I'd even go as far to say raising Bree. On the surface, these look like kind and loving actions. But no, they're not. And it's because of the intention and motivation behind them. Both of these things were done with conditions that he put in place. And every one of those conditions are self-serving and placed his own image, his insecurity, and his desires, and even his own jealousy above any kind of authentic love or sacrifice. And I can prove it. We can talk about Bree and the adoption and the whole storyline, but we can tackle that because I know you have arguments, but I want to make these other points, okay? Another significant hard nut characteristic is the fact, like I said before, that his story is necessary to push Claire forward, and he acts as an anchor and he moves the plot. That's his only purpose in the entire story, if you ask me. And without him, Claire has no internal struggle, blah, blah, blah. And the love triangle wouldn't exist like in the same way. Okay, I'm scared to say this part. I'm a little scared to say this part because I think that it's going to push Liz over the edge.
No, just say it. I love this. I love it. I love it.
Okay, last thing, okay, and certainly not the least though, is that nothing that he ever does surprises me. An onion reveals new layers of themselves and their behaviors as the story unfolds. They reveal hidden depths to their character. They surprise you. Frank never does this. We see him adapt around the edges a little bit, I'll give him that, but his core conflicts remain immovable. He never evolves. In every freaking circumstance, he remains consistent, and it's so frustrating. I've pondered if we asked every Outlander fan out there to describe Frank, they'd say restrained or intelligent, right? Rigid, whatever. But I guarantee most of them would say jealous, but all of them would probably say that he is academically minded and a true historian. And if you look at every single thing that Frank did, it was the decision that he made with those things in mind. And his jealousy of Jamie fuels him throughout the entire series. It's an entire freaking personality trait at this point, okay? And keeping the secrets, to your point, of what he knew, and forcing Claire and in turn Bree to live a lie was proof that he never changed. He never let go of his jealousy. And even in the very end, his jealousy of Jamie is never resolved. He dies with his bitterness intact, proving again that he's a hard nut because he is resistant to any type of growth, any type of transformation. He never surprises anyone. And I mean, I would challenge anyone to tell me one instance where Frank ever surprised them, where they did something and you were like, "Damn, Frank, you know what? I didn't know you had it in him." He doesn't change. And I could go on a lot longer, but I'm not going to because I know we're going to start talking about other stuff. But to me, there is no universe in every timeline. Frank is a freaking hard nut.
Noted.
Okay. Do you still love me?
Noted. That was really good. That was a really good counter argument. I'm really proud of you. I'm so proud of you. Honestly, that was magnificent. I love that we can have these types of conversations. It's so important. It is. It is. Katie, what did you have?
I have so much more.
Do you want to keep going?
Okay. So, oh yeah. Okay. So I'm going to say this, but I need you to hear me out. Okay. So I have Frank as a hard nut, but it's because, okay.
Category. How could you, Kimmy?
Okay. Now hear me out. This is important because I'm specifically talking about show Frank. As I said last week, book Frank can F right off, right? But to Doreen's point, he doesn't really change. We don't see too many layers, in my opinion. He remains a sad, angry, bitter man. Rightfully so. He was put in a shitty situation, and I feel like he did the best he could. Was he perfect? No. Did he always make the right choice? No. But he is such a tortured character. Actually, when I first watched season 1, I was hoping Claire would make it back to him because I felt so bad for him. That is until we got to know Jamie, of course, because Jamie and Claire forever. But yeah, I mean, I have a lot of pity for him. He didn't ask for this to happen to him, which Claire didn't either. I don't mean it like that. I just mean, imagine going on your honeymoon with your spouse, they disappear, come back 3 years later, they're having someone else's child, and they really don't want anything to do with you anymore. I think he really tried to hold on to the hope that Claire would fall back in love with him, like they would get back what they had. You know, for Frank, Claire was to him as Jamie is to Claire. Like she was his great love. So it was hard. Like I don't think he could ever move past that, just as Claire would never be able to move, get over Jamie and vice versa for Jamie and Claire, right? But I do think Claire was right. I think he was biding his time, waiting until Bree got older to leave because he didn't want to sacrifice that time with her, going from spending every day with her to every other weekend with her. I don't think he was willing to give that up. I don't consider his affair with Candy, also known as Sandy, to be cheating because he and Claire had an arrangement. Now, like I said, this is specifically show Frank. I am fully aware that, book Frank cheated and was trying to be sneaky about it. But I think honestly, once he found proof, once he started finding the obituary and he found the painting and things like that, he found proof that she was going to go back to Jamie. I think that's when he kind of lost all hope that she would ever love him again. And I think he had a feeling that Brianna would follow Claire. So he trained Brianna how to survive in that time. And I honestly think at that point, he just wanted to live the rest of his life in peace with someone that loved and appreciated him. And he was hoping that Brianna would go with him.
I do want to say, and this is kind of, it gave me a little bit of a different outlook, and this is something that Liz has said. I do think when you look at it through the lens that to Frank, Claire was what Jamie is to Claire, meaning that Frank loves Claire in the way that Jamie and Claire love each other, does kind of make you feel bad for him. And I want to acknowledge that. But it still doesn't change his own self-interest and his own pattern of behavior. Go ahead, Jenny.
I just had a thought. You're saying, and I agree with you, that they are equal in their love for Claire. Now I'll talk book Jamie really quick, and Frank book really quick. But aren't they the same level? Like, they're both extremely possessive of her. And as I said about Dougal and Jamie's just packaged nicer. Is it the same? Now, look, I'm going to agree that Frank is a nut, but aren't they still packaged? Isn't Jamie just still packaged a little bit nicer in his possession of her? I don't know whether that's a for Frank or against Frank, but feel free to
I
expand.
think
Liz
that
is
that's
writing
a
notes.
I think that it's a for Frank, but I do think to counteract that, and I'm going to let Liz put her opinion on it as well. To counteract that, Jamie does let his love for Claire hurt him. He makes sacrifices for Claire and for the betterment of Claire, for the betterment of Bree, countless times. Even in much later books, this isn't a spoiler, we see him saying, if I die, go back where it's safe. Take,
Right.
we saw it in season 7, take Bree back, go where it's safe. He is willing to hurt and ache for himself for the betterment of Bree and Claire, and I don't think Frank exhibits that.
Okay. I think that's a good point. It was just a thought that came to me. Like, they really are both extremely possessive of her. And yeah.
I will agree with the fact that I don't think, I mean, we see it, right? Frank had proof, physical proof that Jamie was still alive and he didn't tell Claire. And that was a shitty thing to do, yes. But, I just keep thinking about this. I don't know. I struggle with it because I don't think Jamie would do it to that extent because he would want Claire to be happy. But at the same time, when she came back and he was married to Leary, he wasn't exactly forthcoming about that. You know what I mean? And when they had their argument in both the show and the book, he tells her, I would have done far worse than lie to keep you here, with me. And so I think that's kind of what Frank did, right? Like he wanted to hold on to her as long as he could. He had this daughter that is in his life now that he loved, and he didn't want to let her go. And he knew, I mean, I think he assumed that Claire would take her, try to take her. And, he had proof that she was going back. So I think in his mind, maybe he was just like, well, I'm going to have this time with her that I can, and she's going to go back to him anyway. I don't know.
Liz, can I ask you a question? Do you think, when you think about Frank keeping the secret, Do you think that he was doing it to protect Bree because you think that she was in danger from MI6?
So I think that Frank keeping that secret is very layered and leveled because I think he had more than one reason to do that. To your point, I can't say 100% yes or no because I have not read the later books, but I would not put it beyond Diana to include that facet of Frank's life because there is an entire novella about that to bring that in. And that, of course, would set Brianna up for trouble. Depending on the level of knowledge that Frank had or that someone knew he had about information that could not be disclosed for whatever the reason is, say yeah. Is it likely that that happens? Probably, knowing the way Outlander works. Absolutely. But also knowing that I have a feeling that Frank's character is by far, in the books and the show, not done yet. We keep seeing and feeling echoes of him, even throughout the show, even throughout the books where I am. There's still echoes of him. He's not alive, but he's still very actively present in the lives of the people that he once knew and once loved. So that was a great question, and I think it's highly probable that that could happen. Absolutely.
Okay, so I do want to say I think it's very interesting, and I really do begrudgingly because I don't like to give Frank any credit. But I do agree that there is a lot more that's going to be revealed about him. And I found it interesting that the excerpt that Diana did release from Frank's book and hearing his point of view and how he views marriage was very different than I thought he would be. And that's why I'm continually saying that I feel Diana is retconning his character. And that's why I say I think his story is an onion, but he's not an onion because everything that's being revealed it to this point is being through the lens of other characters and he's always acting the same. I feel every single circumstance that I could argue was in his own self-interest. And that's why I think I said to everyone, can you give me one example of how he wasn't acting in his own self-interest? And I do leave it open that there may be something when we get his POV that maybe will change my thought on that. But as of right now, he's dead. And everything I've seen is him acting in a jealous, self-serving way. So go ahead, Katie. I see Katie's got something.
So do you think, I'm just curious. I want everyone's opinion on this because when you had said that, like name something that he did that didn't benefit him. I think of him raising Bree because like what did he get out of that? You know what I mean? Like he wanted to be a father, yes, but I don't know. That's just the first thing that came to my mind because I feel like that's such a selfless thing to do is to step in for a child that doesn't have a father, especially there's no blood there, but because he loves Claire, he extended that love to Bree. Go ahead, Liz. I see you're like chomping at the bit. You're right. Go.
So that was actually my answer as well to Doreen's question. Name one thing that Frank did when he was acting out of complete selflessness. And I immediately thought of Brianna. And the reason I immediately thought of Brianna is because to me, Frank was very much a man of his time, but he acted in a way that was incredibly progressive, similar to the way that we see Jamie behaving. And Frank stepped out of the box of societal norm and raised a child that was not his, which was not something common during that time. And I don't know the extent of how Frank actually might have protected Brianna, or how he did his best to protect Brianna through his research, but I feel like I need more information to really drive that point home, because I do think at some point in Frank's mind, it became less about Claire and more about his child and what he could find that could be potentially of use to her, what he could find that could help protect her, what he could find that might help her make choices or make decisions that would benefit her. Because to me, that is the love of a parent, that is the love of a father, a mother, doing whatever you can, sometimes moving in silence, sometimes speaking no words about it, but doing things behind the scenes that will give your child the benefit in the future, the safety in the future, the protection in the future. So, like I said, I don't necessarily know the extent of his research or what he found, but I do think when it comes to Brianna, Frank act not selfishly, but very selflessly. Jenny, I saw your hand up.
So I will agree with, I do think he loved Brianna. How he expresses that, I'm going to leave that question on. Now, again, I'm talking about book Frank. I think in parenting, I may have mentioned this already, that it would have shown in his actions towards Brianna if he held resentment towards her. It would show up. I think we see that a lot in the news with stories of families, and things don't end up ending very well for them, where you've got a child that's a stepchild and the resentment is taken out. I don't see resentment towards Brianna. What I will say though is Frank has a very specific picture of the life he wants, and I think Jamie not existing is the perfect scenario for him. Him
Yes.
him going to search for Jamie, proof of Jamie in the show is portrayed much differently than it is in the books. In the show, it's right before Claire goes into labor. He sits down at the desk and he writes the Reverend a note. It makes it look like he's concerned for Claire's mental health. He can see she's at her breaking point. And I do think in the show, he's really trying to grasp onto, holding on to his marriage, that he's really in love with her. Now, in the books, when he finds out Claire is pregnant, and I wish they would have left this in, he smashes a vase. And knowing what we know about that vase symbolism, that moment, it showed in the books that that was where their marriage broke. And going forward is only a show. There's a point in the books where they have Frank's boss and wife come over. And Claire's been home all day. The heater went out. The plumber had to come over. She went food shopping. She's got breast milk all over her. She's just a train wreck. And she's still trying to get ready. She dresses Brianna. She accidentally leaves a pin in the shirt. She scratches. Like, it's just one of those days as a mom where you're just like, that's it. I've hit the wall. She comes downstairs with Brianna. And Frank's first words are not, oh my God, what can I do to help you? They are, you look like a train wreck. And she hands Brianna over. She gets in the car and she drives away. And I got to be honest with you, good for her. I think he wanted everything perfect. He bought her a new outfit. He wanted everything to look perfect. So Jamie not being there gave him a perfect scenario. And I don't know if I already said this. I think he started out to prove Jamie didn't exist, that she was nuts. He wanted to find out who this person was. And then he proved to himself that this really was somebody that he didn't have to compete with because he was dead and he could move forward with his picture perfect life. So I don't know that it's as, if the right word's altruistic in his motives going forward. Doreen, go ahead.
I was chomping at the bit, but I held back because I one of the questions that I had was if everyone honestly thought that if Jamie existed in their time and that he was not dead, but for whatever reason Jamie and Claire couldn't be together, would Frank have still done this? And for me, you guys can all answer it, but for me, it's absolutely not. Because, and I have a quote from book 1 of Outlander. And I know we're separating book show and Frank show. I want to acknowledge, I know that Liz's love for Frank is because she fell in love with Frank as a show character, and she completely acknowledges his faults in the books, but her choice to love him is in the show, and I respect it on a very deep level.
And
My
same for
feelings,
me.
yes, and same for Katie.
Mm-hmm.
My feelings for Frank cannot change because I met him in the book. Okay. And in the very first book, he meets a young baby Roger who's not a baby, but, young Roger, and has just lost both of his parents, and now he's an orphan. And Claire is feeling really bad about it. She's saying how just devastating it is that all of these children are now orphans after the war, and maybe they should adopt a child. And this is his own words. Frank says, "No, I've told you how I feel about adoption. I couldn't feel properly for a child that's not of my blood." He then goes on to say that maybe his mind would change one day, but he doubts it. And this is to me the most important part. He says, "I want our child, Claire. You're the most important thing to me. I want you happy, but I want to keep you to myself. I'm afraid a child from the outside, one we had no connection to, would seem an intruder and I'd resent it." And that to me shows everything I'm saying about him, that everything is conditional and in his own perfect little fantasy world. Him not telling Bree the truth about her parentage, him never letting her know who she really was, to let her live an entire life of lies is not a selfless love. It's very self-serving, and his perception that he gave out to the world, he had a beautiful wife who was very brilliant. He had this beautiful daughter. She was going to be a historian and go to Harvard. It all fit the narrative that he wanted. And if they went out of line from that, I think we would have seen something very different. Go ahead, Liz. You
I
got it.
just, you said something really interesting, and I know that Frank did talk about children and adoption in the books. That conversation did not happen in the show. That really is a book thing. And I this question, is for anyone who wants to answer it, but specifically for Doreen, because you brought up the topic so beautifully. I feel like where Frank and Claire were in their marriage, in their relationship at that point, I I guess I feel a little bit of sensitivity toward him, of knowing knowing what it's like to want to have a child for the first time, and wanting that child to be of yours and the other person that you love, and not necessarily looking at adoption as the first choice. Do you think that Frank was really being, like, truly at his core selfish in that moment of saying, I could never, ever, 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 ever love a child that was not the two of us? Or was he just maybe at this place of, I want to try to have a child with you first before we think about other options? I'm curious, because this is also a man's perspective that we're talking about, not a woman's perspective, right? So, Doreen, what do you think?
I'm not saying I don't think that there is some of that there, because I think it's for most people, and I'm not trying to generalize. Of course, when you love someone and you're married, you're like, we want to make something beautiful of that love together. And adoption is a beautiful thing. It's the same love. I have it. I have that in my own life. Okay.
Right.
But I just think it's more his personality, that he views things very rigid, and that there's a way things are supposed to be, and everything has to be how he pictures it in his mind, and an adopted child doesn't fit that narrative. And I think that Bree never being told she's adopted and nobody from the outside ever being told she's adopted supports that. And I think it was Jenny who made a very, very brilliant observation and has brought this to my attention, is that yes, we see that Frank is racist in the book, and we're not discussing that, but I've always thought the reason he didn't like Joe Abernathy wasn't really about race. It, like Jenny said, it's about Joe knowing the truth about Bree, and Frank didn't like that because it cracked that image. So I think that Frank viewed adoption as taboo and not something that fit a narrative of what he wanted to present to the world. And that's why I say if Jamie existed and everybody knew that Bree wasn't his biological child, I do not think he would love her in the same way.
To expand on that, if we always talk about how we have to look through it from, current eyes versus 1950s eyes, or what year is this? 1940s. Adoption back then was something you did behind closed doors. I don't know where I'm really going with this, but I just want to add in a little history from what I can tell you from my personal life without expanding on it. It has nothing to do with me personally. But you did not tell people you were pregnant out of wedlock. That was an absolute no. If you got pregnant, you were sent off to a convent, and that was done with you. You were on vacation and you went away. So with Claire having Brianna and him putting this life together, but to try to like expand upon where Frank would die before letting anyone know that Brianna was adopted because of the taboo. All right, so I don't know where I'm really going with this other than adoption had a lot of taboo. Back then, secrets were kept until your death. You just didn't talk about stuff like this. So the fact that Joe Abernathy, being another doctor, absolutely could see through that. There's no way that these two people would have a child with red hair. You can call recessive gene all you want, it's just not going to happen. So, yeah, I do absolutely believe that was another reason why he felt threatened by Joe. Doreen, go ahead.
I'm going to let Katie go because she is just chomping at the bit. She's like jumping up and down over there. Probably
I
because
just
she
can't
wants to
sit
support
still.
she wants to support her best friend. I just want to say, so Jenny, it's interesting because what you just said kind of supports what I'm saying and what Liz is saying. So maybe this is a situation where there's kind of a middle ground, that
A great
it
area.
wasn't it wasn't necessarily so selfish, but it was kind of a man in that time. And that
Mm-hmm.
does also feed the narrative, though, that he did it under his own circumstances. And I stand by the point that I do not think he would ever do it if people knew that it was Brianna was not his child. And if Jamie existed, in their time, I do not think that he would love Bree in the same way. And
I agree.
I think it's inexcusable that he never told her and Claire the danger that she was in with regards to the Fraser prophecy. That was unacceptable to me. And that is not love, in my opinion. So, okay, Katie, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're fine. And I guess that's where I'm not as well versed, because I don't know, I haven't gotten to that part in the books yet about the Fraser prophecy. So I have no clue. I know the gist of it, but I don't know what that has to do with anything. I'm just solely basing my opinions, like I said, off what we've seen of Frank in the show. None of my opinions of Frank or defending Frank come from the book, because we all know how I feel about him. I've said it several times. But I just on the adoption point, I want to say I agree. I don't think that it would be something he would do if Jamie were on their timeline. I think he would be like, you want to be with him, go ahead and be with him. We'll get divorced, yada yada yada. I'm not raising that kid. I think a big part of why he raised Bree is because he wanted to hold on to Claire. He wanted, you know, I think he was hoping Claire would fall back in love with him. So yes, I guess it would be for selfish reasons, but I believe he truly fell in love with Bree and loved being her father. I don't think he ever looked at her like she was any different. And I think if he had done that, Bree would have sensed that. Bree would have not as been as close with him, if that makes any sense. She would have been like, well, he doesn't really treat me like I'm his. She never had any idea that she wasn't, because they were so close, even closer than she and Claire were. But I've been sitting here making notes while you guys are talking. So I'm going to go back to a couple points that were touched on. So Jenny had mentioned Frank smashing the vase, and that reminded me of a scene in the fight between Jamie and Claire when she had just found out that he was married to Leary. And in the book specifically, he pushes her back to where she falls on the bed, and she's saying things to him as Claire does. And she said he balls up his fist, and she honestly thinks that he's going to hit her. And she said, and then his, wrist lets go, he just kind of relaxes his hand. They switched that to Frank doing that in the show. And I think that was to kind of show that, yes, he is a descendant of Blackjack, like not directly, but, through Alex. He does have that inside of him, but the difference is Frank knows how to kind of
Reel it
restrain
in.
himself.
Yeah.
Reel it in, yeah, restrain himself.
Self-regulate. Yes.
Yes. So that was just something I noticed when Jenny was talking. And then Liz, she was talking about, Frank possibly finding proof that Bree went back in time. And I think that also proves like a selfless thing, because say he did find proof, whether he, had an idea that or like just kind of thought that she might go back, or whether he found proof that she was going to go back, he taught her how to live in that time period. And knowing that she was going to leave, I just don't feel like that's a selfish thing to do. If you feel like, if you feel like your child is going to leave you anyway, and he's giving her all the tools I feel like if he was selfish, he would have been, done anything he could have to keep her there. And yes, he did try to get her to go to England with him. I know that. But everybody tries to change things from happening, right? Even if something's going to happen, they try to change things from happening. Jamie and Claire did that. Bree and Roger do that. Like, they try to change the outcome. And so I feel like that's what Frank was trying to do. Sorry, Doreen, go ahead.
I'm about having an aneurysm over here, because no, that is so selfish. Because you know what would have not been selfish? Telling her the motherfucking truth. Telling her the truth and letting her prepare her damn self. Hey, I am preparing you because this is coming. I am preparing you because you're in danger. Sorry.
But
Oh, that
she
was
would have
so
believed him.
aggressive.
But do you
I'm
think
so
she would have
sorry.
believed him?
No,
Because
Liz
she
had her
didn't
hand
believe
up. Go,
Claire.
Liz.
I think I had already maybe posed this question earlier, but I I just I guess I struggle with trying to rationalize why Frank would knowingly send Claire to her death, or knowingly send Brianna into danger. Like, I really do see that as him acting selflessly to protect them. And is there a level of selfishness in there? 100%. There is a level of selfishness in there. And when you don't want to let go of someone that you care about, I have definitely been there. I have acted selfishly in certain ways when I haven't wanted to let go of someone that I deeply cared about. But I also see Frank as someone who acted selflessly because he had to carry around a lot of very heavy information and heavy secrets. I just want to give one example, and I know that this is show only, but for anyone who was on the live watch when Katie and I were watching season 7, part 2, there is an episode where on the title card, the painting of Molly Pitcher appeared. And the painting of Molly Pitcher is extremely important to Revolutionary War history. And as the camera rolls back, you not only see Jamie and Claire in that painting, but you see what I believe to be an homage to Frank and young Brianna at a museum looking at that painting. And I burst out into tears. And the first thing that I said was, he knew this whole time and he had to carry that with him, and how unfair that was to him. That's just how I saw it, and that's how that moment affected me. And I know that that is very show Frank and not book Frank. I know that, but that moment really impacted me, and I feel like this is part of why I think Frank is an onion, because I keep peeling layers of things about him back that I didn't know before, and there's still other layers to be peeled back. Go ahead, Doreen.
I'm sorry, I really lost it before. I'm gonna be calm. That was aggressive, Katie. I'm very sorry. You guys, I'm the unhinged in the title, just so you know. But I just want to, and then I'm gonna let Jenny go. She keeps putting her hand up, but I want to say to that point, I agree that was a beautiful scene. I loved it in the show. But again, it was his choice to carry that. He did not, he enforced that on everyone. He is the one who said, "You can't search for Jamie, but I'm going to search for him, and I'm going to not tell you that I found him. You can't tell Bree that I'm her father. You can't tell, I know all these things and about from, that you're in danger, the Fraser prophecy, that you're going to go back, the obituary, and I'm going to choose to carry it and not tell you because I'm selfish and I'm afraid of what it means." And yes, it's sad because it means he's going to lose his family, and I recognize that, and that maybe I would do the same thing. I'm not saying I wouldn't act selfishly, because I love my husband and my kids. If they were going to leave, I'd be like, no way. I would do everything. But it's he's immovable. He never changes his motivations. Let's let Jenny go really quick. She's been like 10 minutes trying to.
I know. I
Um,
just have something to your point.
Oh, okay.
let's
Go ahead.
start
Go
with,
ahead.
yeah, go ahead. That's fine.
So, but my thing is like, yes, he chose to carry it, but why would he send, because he had already found the obituary at that point. So why would he send her to her death? If he thought he could change the outcome and keep her here and keep her safe, not that it's okay, like he should have given her the choice. Yes. I'm just saying maybe what he was thinking rationally. Like, why would he send her to go die in the past? You know what I mean? Like, that's
I'm
just
never
what
getting a word
I.
in.
I'm going to say one thing and then you're in, Jenny. Because he's a historian and he knows that it already happened in its history and he can't change it. Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Jenny.
No, that's okay. That was one of my points, is that it's the picture is history, and there's nothing he can do to change it. But I want to start with like the hunting and the fishing. Why do we assume it was to help her? These are just interests of Frank. It's self-serving. He likes hunting. He likes fishing. Why not just teach her the things that I like versus expanding her horizons? We're assuming it's for her good. It might not have anything to do with it. Um, and now I lost my whole train of thought.
You
Figure
know
out
what?
where I was in
Honestly,
my
I
thought.
never thought of that. I never thought of that. We did all just assume that's what it was.
Yeah, to protect her going backwards, and it
To
might not have
prepare her.
anything to do with.
Okay. So I have a question, and Jenny, whenever the thought comes back,
I'll
just
let you
let
know.
us know, and you can pop in. But so I have a question to the point that's being made about Frank keeping secrets, that it was his choice to carry them. He decided not to share the information for selfless or selfish reasons. But I think I want to take it a step further and ask how his telling might have impacted things on a larger scale. Meaning, was Frank supposed to keep these secrets the entire time because the timelines had to happen, the interactions had to happen, the meetings had to happen? If Frank told and gave the choice, how might that have impacted other people's choices to stay, go, travel, not travel, marry, not marry? I've wondered about that before, even just in my own thoughts. If Frank's story played out differently and he did share what he knew, how might that have influenced other people's decisions? And then what happens to the timelines? Because if everything is predestined, as Roger McDaddy Woo says, if everything is predestined, then these things that Frank was doing they were supposed to happen anyway. And does that then make him selfish, or does that make him just part of what was necessary for everything to come together? Doreen.
It just makes him part of history because, like we know, everything's predestined. Those events already happened in the past, and they happened because Frank kept the secret. If it would have changed things, but it doesn't matter because it already is history. It already happened. And like we know, Diana has said, you can change little things. Like if I say, Liz, don't go over there, you're going to get smallpox. I can change your history, but I can't change the masses or something that's already a historical event. And we do see the fire and how it changes in the newspaper. We see that. But again, that's a directive of like events that Jamie and Claire has prevented. So you have to ponder that because you see it happening, and if Bree never went back, you learn actually Bree's the one, right, that caused it, so her going back, so it is all predestined. But I think it just makes, it doesn't have anything to do with Frank's motivations. It just has to do with, this is the story and it's already happened, it's predestined, and him being selfish is what makes the history happen. And if he wasn't selfish, we'd have a very different story.
Okay, so I have a question that I want to ask, really related to Claire, because I don't think that this is talked about enough, and I would be interested to hear all of your thoughts as well. When it comes to the 20 years or less, right, that Frank and Claire spent together after she came back through the stones from Jamie, is there any part of that suffering, that unhappiness that Claire is responsible for? Because I do think that she plays a part in adding to the suffering and the misery, because it was both of them at the same time. And I don't feel like that's talked about enough, because I feel like the conversations that I've had or the comments that I've seen really point fingers at Frank. Well, he's the one that burned her clothes, and he's the one that said never to talk about the past. So isn't there something to be said for Claire contributing to the misery and the suffering? Because anything that I've heard or read or discussed has pointed a lot of fingers at Frank, and I understand why. He's the one who burned her 18th century clothes and said, never talk about the past. And of course, that was a terrible thing to do and a terrible thing to say. But Frank was essentially in a loveless marriage with someone he was madly in love with. So don't we have to rationally look at their time together respectfully and say, Mother Claire, I love you so much, but you played a part in that suffering also. It was not just Frank. It wasn't. Go ahead, Jenny.
I'm never going to disagree with that because I said this when we were talking about Dougal. I think we have an overinflated love for Claire and Jamie because they're the main characters. And look, I love them too. I'm not saying that I don't, but I do believe that Claire coming back, she absolutely could have done better in her marriage. Now, I will not remember this from the books, but absolutely in the show when they're trying to get busy after having dinner with the family. I do think he got a little bit too upset about her and her eyes closing. I think they were both at fault at that moment. That you could have tried a little bit harder in that moment. Now, I've never
Hmm.
traveled back to the 18th century to meet a Highlander. I don't know that I would come back wrapped too tight either, but this was her reality in this moment.
Hmm.
And I am a big believer in this is where you are right now. This is what you have to do. And if you want, look, she had no other options. And again, if we're talking about that time period in the 40s, 50s, she really had zero options. Uncle Lamb had already passed away. Her parents, but that's for another day. And she would have been a single mother, and she really would have had a much harder time. In fact, look, I'm not even a Frank fan, but he allowed her to go to school. He allowed her to become a doctor. Um, he's a complex character. I still think he's a nut, but I don't think we put enough blame on Jamie and Claire when it comes to the fallout from the decisions that they make.
I agree. I think, and that's kind of one of the bigger problems I had with Claire show specifically. In the books, I don't feel like we get a good enough look at their marriage. I feel like we get a lot better look in the show. We get little clips of her and Frank's life in Voyager, but I don't feel it's as much as the show is. So, show specifically, she was cold to him always. And yes, she's still in love with Jamie. Yes, she's going through something horrible. But I think the thing that they lacked is just communication. But a lot of that was because she wasn't allowed to speak about him, right? So it was both of them. It was both of them, him not letting her process her pain, get through it, just expecting her to like bounce back, but also like she never tried to give him a chance. She never tried to let him in. At that point, the moment she came back, she was done. And I think she used Frank for security, and I don't think that's right to do. Would it have been harder as a single mother? Absolutely, but it's not fair to him to just use him as a provider either, and then to like try to sleep with him and give him all these ideas that maybe there's hope, which like you said, both of them were at fault there because he got too insecure about it, and I think that's a big problem for Frank is he's just very insecure. So I don't know. Yes, Jenny.
I just want to, before people jump all over me with he allowed her to go to school, let's remember the time period. Women had to ask for permission for everything. So I don't want anybody getting all over me. I'll be out there burning my bra with anybody today. But back then, she couldn't even have a checking account. Checking accounts didn't actually, I think, establish until almost into the 70s. Women weren't allowed.
Hmm.
When she says they're not allowed at the bar, I'm not kidding. My
Hmm.
parents had to belong to like a club in order to do that. So, but you said something else about it's gone. Forget it. But that's the end of it. That's what I just
No.
wanted. I don't want people to like jump all over me that he allowed her. He really did. He didn't have to let her do anything at this point. He's providing a home. He's providing her daughter with a roof over her head. And again, I still don't like Frank, but I can't dismiss the things that did happen because of this relationship. And I think that's where I was going with that, Katie, that it
Hmm.
provided her
Hmm.
stability, which she would not have had on her own. Go ahead, Dory.
Okay, I don't think anybody's going to jump all over you. They're going to be jumping over me because I yelled at Katie, who's the sweetest person in the world, and I used motherfucker. Okay, but listen, I get really passionate, you guys, and it's hard to sit here
Same.
for five
My
minutes when
face is
someone
purple.
is totally going off about something and you're just like, no. So again, but I just want to say, I think here's the thing, for me at least, and to kind of wrap this up is, while I put him as a nut because I think he's selfish and his motivations, but I think what this has shown us, and I'm agreeing with Liz on this, is that every character in Outlander is arguably a hybrid of sorts,
Thanks, Dad.
because they are complex and we're only seeing it through the lens that's being provided by us, okay? And we're getting the show lens,
Yes.
and we're getting the book lens, and we're getting the point of views that we are getting. And I do think when we get Frank's book, we're going to be getting a very different lens. And I've said repeatedly that I have felt with later books, the way that Diana is changing the narrative around Frank is that she's retconning him. So I see the complexities in Frank, but I just don't see the complexities in why he did what he did. I understand the circumstances, I understand the time period. I just don't agree with a lot of things that he did. And I do think it's because he's selfish, but I do recognize that when someone that you love breaks your heart, you're going to act selfishly. I don't want to discredit what you're saying about, yes, Claire was a big part of that. I am Claire's biggest hater. Okay. I don't even know if you guys know that because I think Claire is the problem in every situation. But that's for another day. So I just want to say, like, while I disagree with you on his placement, and I don't think he's an onion, I do recognize that he's a complex character in the way that he's told. His story is an onion, but he's not.
Fair is fair. Fair is fair.
And I think that's a
Okay.
great point that you made about, oh my God, now I lost it. You had said something.
Claire, the lens.
Claire is the problem.
It's me.
It would.
Hi. Shawnee would be so happy that I was singing Taylor Swift.
The thing I was going to say is that I definitely think that Claire adds, fuel to the fire or creates the fire for sure. I mean, going back in season 3, she, creates all sorts of chaos as soon as she comes back. But, like we said, it was both of their faults, her and Frank, in the marriage. But it's also things like, she agreed to the affair. She was totally fine with him having an affair. But, then she gets jealous. So it's like, pick one. And I think that's why Frank had such a hard time, because it's like, do you want me or do you not? Because you're sitting here acting jealous that I'm trying to move on with my life, what you told me to do. But, now you're getting jealous. So I agree that it was, Claire is not 100% innocent in anything.
Agreed.
Okay, I think we've reached our time limit for today. We could probably go for another hour, but it is what it is.
Well, I hope everybody enjoyed this episode. If you're still listening, don't tell Liz, but I think Frank's a narcissist.
Blasphemy.
Really?
I really don't have anything else. That was all I came up with.
All right, go ahead, Katie. Follow that up.
Well, on that note, keep joining us for chaos and, deep diving into theories. And you never know what you're going to get on these lives. So keep joining us.
Frank is not a narcissist. Dougal is. And we will make sure to drop Roger McDaddy Woo's episode next week because I decided to pick the most controversial characters. So until then, we will see you in the space between.
And until next time, stay Outlander unhinged.